Last week in Michigan politics, the all-important race for Michigan governor in 2026 already raking in millions of dollars. With new campaign finance reports from candidates last week, what the numbers reveal. Plus, Michigan's governor taking action to pinpoint exactly how tariffs may be impacting the state's economy, how she's ordering departments to find out. And the Grand Rapids police chief giving a report to city leaders this week, but it comes amidst some recent criticism of local police, why he told them his department has been making progress, and what others had to say. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on Your Side rundown. And we begin with Your Voice, Your Vote. New campaign finance numbers released last week indicate just how important the race for Michigan's next governor is. Last week, candidates filed their reports for the last few months through late July. In the race for the Democratic nomination, Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson reported that she raised $3.5 million for her campaign since January. Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson raised nearly $1.1 million since February. Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist raised $768,000 since March. And on the Republican side, both U.S. Congressman John James and State Senate Minority Leader Eric Nesbitt both raised around $2.3 million each. Nesbitt since January and James since April. Former Michigan Attorney General Mike Cox raised $1.4 million since January, and former State House Speaker Tom Leonard raised $646,000 since June. There's also a high-profile independent in the race, of course. Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan raised $3.2 million. Election Day is Tuesday, August 5th across West Michigan, but with turnout in local off-year elections often being very low, many might not know it. We talked to officials around West Michigan about what they've been hearing and why they say elections are very much important here. It's because these often feature so many issues, proposals, candidates in your community that will directly affect how you live, that often fly under the radar. And for individual voters, that could be for a number of reasons. With less than 1 week to Election Day, Muskegon County Clerk Karen Bowie is a busy person.
That's the important thing for me, that I don't care who they vote for. Just get out there and vote.
But for many, the fact that an election will be taking place in towns across the state next Tuesday might be news to them.
A lot of times people don't even know that there's a primary election in August.
And for local off-year elections like August 5th, the turnout often reflects it.
Usually about 30%.
Sometimes 10% to mid to high teens.
15 to 20% turnout quite often in these municipal races.
From what local clerks have heard, the reasons may vary from not knowing to not seeing a reason to do so.
Generally speaking, people aren't paying as much attention because really there's not candidates going out into the communities and bringing in news media and just creating a buzz.
But clerks around West Michigan seem to be seeing a similar picture. Even so, the importance, they say, is still very much there.
So often in these off-year elections, these smaller elections, this is where major decisions are being made in your community about things that are going on that directly affect you and your family, sometimes directly affect your tax bill.
They may be in regards to your libraries, your police, your fire millages, the potholes in your street.
It's certainly true for many in places like Muskegon Township, where after what some saw as a critical fire and safety millage failed this past May, new proposals for funding will be up to the voters next week.
We're gonna be back out there educating our citizens why this is so critical for them, for our department, and for the community as a whole.
As to what could or should be done to close the gap.
Is it incumbent on perhaps the institutions like the press and officials, or is it incumbent on voters to participate further in the education and turnout? Where do you think it falls to change something so that that gap is smaller?
I mean, I think it's a combination, honestly.
I think part of that is making sure that we get out in the community and let people know.
The more people vote and participate in the elections that are available to them, the more they will be more proactive to seek out whether there's an election in their jurisdiction on these regular election days.
Now, because these are local elections, not everyone will have something on their ballot. To find a list of what may be on your local ballot, you can visit the Michigan Secretary of State's website. At the state capitol, there are concerns about school safety and security for the start of the school year in Michigan, as the state legislature still hasn't passed an education budget. We spoke with a school safety expert on the choices districts have to make without one. Stalemate in the state capitol continues after months of back and forth.
The Republican caucus doesn't take this very seriously.
I don't have confidence that the Senate Democrats are serious.
Lawmakers in a Republican-led House and a Democratic-led Senate still unable to come to a deal on the state budget, due by October 1st to avoid a government shutdown. But already, some fear the wait is having an impact.
The bottom line, truthfully, is Michigan kids are going to go back to schools that were less safe than they were in previous years.
Heading a local security firm that provides professional development, Jason Russell fears one area in particular that could suffer: school safety.
Last year we did around 60 sessions prior to school starting. This year we have less than 5. And the main reason for that is schools don't know what their budget's going to be.
With the legal but toothless July 1st budget deadline now passed, schools are on the clock to figure out what to do with what they have.
We've seen 6 of our districts cut a significant number of security personnel throughout the state just because they don't know what money they're going to have.
Both legislative chambers passing their own versions of a budget, but not an agreement to send to Governor Gretchen Whitmer. While both ideas have good proposals, Russell feels, both sides of the aisle need to work to come to one compromise to get the schools their money.
How long does it seem like to you, from what you're hearing, can they actually hold out?
You know, I think until the school starts, quite frankly, right, they're making staffing decisions, they're making decisions on security, they're making decisions on professional development. A lot of those decisions have already been made and really can't be changed. So I think by the time school starts, if we had a budget, that would help.
But with the clock ticking by the day, the sooner, Russell signaled, the better.
We have to get something done. We have to move forward. And right now, schools are being held hostage. And parents need to know that, and they need to be reaching out to their lawmakers and saying, this is unacceptable. We need a budget. Schools need to know what their budget is, and they need to get this done in Lansing.
Josh Alburtus, 13 on your side. A bill to limit cell phone use in schools failed this week in the Michigan House of Representatives. Governor Whitmer had called for bipartisan legislation to limit cell phone use in schools during her 2025 State of the State address in February. The bill aimed to restrict phones in hopes of addressing concerns over its negative impact on teens' mental health and academic performance. There's a shortage of childcare workers in Michigan, and a lack of benefits might be a big reason why. Over half of childcare staff members, a state official told us, don't have access to benefits. A new pilot program announced by the state earlier this month is trying to make it easier for those workers to afford doing the job. That $4.4 million Nurture Benefits pilot from the state's Department of Lifelong Education, Advancement, and Potential, or MyLeap, would be open to all licensed or license-exempt child care providers if they work at least 30 hours a week. Employers would apply to offer benefits to employees, those eventually including health, life, and retirement benefits. The money comes from part of a federal grant given to MyLeap, and through this partnership with the Small Business Association of Michigan, which will manage the pilot, it's meant to help offset some of the costs so more employees can be covered.
What we know is over half of childcare staff members don't have access to benefits. And when providers can't offer health, life, retirement, we see a lot of staff turnover, staffing gaps, fewer high quality spots for families to send their kids. And so by overcoming these barriers, we're not only helping staff, people of Michigan access health, retirement, and life. We're actually addressing access to affordable quality childcare for Michigan families.
Now, this seems to be getting the nod from some childcare advocates. The president of local group First Steps Kent telling 13 on your side, quote, "Childcare here and across the country is simply not sustainable, not for families and not for childcare providers. Families can't afford the average cost of $10,870 per year for one full-time infant, And early educators can't afford to stay in the field with an average salary of just $26,680. She later went on to say, quote, increasing access to benefits, support, and resources will help more educators stay in the field or keep their doors open. When the child care system is stronger, parents can return to work or stay in their jobs, which helps local businesses with staffing and supports a stronger overall economy. That program is expected to roll out its open enrollment starting this fall, and benefits would start in the new year. And as some worry of the impact of tariffs on back-to-school season, we spoke to an expert on how you could save. We'll have that coming up after the break. For months, people have theorized as to what the ultimate impact of President Donald Trump's tariff strategy will be on Michigan. While some have already pointed to tariffs as a factor behind business decisions, some of the discussion has still remained speculative, waiting to see what will, in fact, play out. But now Governor Whitmer is ordering the state to gather the data and pinpoint for certain what all has happened. This week, the governor signing an executive directive telling state offices to, in the words of the governor's office, quote, investigate, calculate, and report the latest impact of tariffs on Michigan's economy. The directive, signed Thursday, applies to the state's Departments of Agriculture and Rural Development, Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, Natural Resources, Technology, Management and Budget, and Transportation, as well as the State Housing Development Authority. Reports are due to the governor within 30 days of the signing, but departments can request an extension of up to 60 days. Back-to-school shopping is underway, and many Michigan families will be paying more likely for school supplies. Governor Whitmer says new tariffs are driving up prices on those kinds of goods. 13 on your side's Kiara Patterson shows us how one expert says you can save.
The trade war and the tariffs is hitting school shoppers hard, and we might be bracing for additional tariffs.
From notebooks to sneakers, back-to-school shopping is hitting families harder this year.
The prices are up really across the board. Electronics prices are sky high. The price of sneakers is more expensive. The price of jeans is more expensive. And then also food as well. So this, of course, impacts families who send their kids to school with school lunches, with a lunchbox from home. But this also impacts the schools.
Major retailers like Walmart and Best Buy have already raised prices, some ahead of the new tariffs set to take effect August 1st.
On average, school supplies are up more than 20% overall. More than 40% of back-to-school shoppers are saying they're going to have to put school supplies on the credit card this year, not able to cover the cost in the immediate term.
Consumer pricing expert Lindsay Owens from the economic think tank Groundwork Collaborative says some retailers are passing down the real cost of tariffs to consumers, while others are raising prices simply because they can.
Companies are actually really exploiting all of the swirl and noise around these tariff announcements to pass along higher prices. They know consumers are expecting those higher prices, and then actually just pocketing the difference because they haven't been hit yet by the tariffs.
Owen says without relief, prices may keep rising into the holidays. To stretch your dollar, she recommends shopping early, comparing prices, and considering store brands or secondhand supplies.
Trying to get ahead of any additional tariffs that are coming down the pike, and then if you can, being a bit more flexible and moving towards store brands and away from some of the flagship and name brands.
Kiara Patterson, 13 on your side.
President Trump signed an executive order last week aiming to push cities to remove those who are unhoused from local encampments. How the city's police chief says they're handling the news. That's next. As city leaders met this week in Grand Rapids, the city's police chief, Eric Winstrom, amidst recent criticism of local police, said it has made progress since he got there. 13 on your side's Callie Lichter was at the meeting where he talked about it.
After 3 years at the Grand Rapids Police Department, Chief Eric Winstrom says progress is being made. He gave updates at Tuesday's Committee of the Whole and Public Safety Committee meetings at City Hall. Violent crime in the city is trending downward, something the department is happy to see. However, the city has seen many people lost to gun violence.
And you'll see the trend of violent crime is trending downward. However, when we lose a teenager to gun violence, that's no comfort to that individual's family, that individual's loved ones.
Winstrom says while the violence continues to decrease, he has a new goal for the next 3 years.
What does the city look like 3 years from now? That we've turned the corner on gun violence, especially with young people.
Winstrom started shortly before former GRPD officer Christopher Schur shot and killed Patrick Loyola during a traffic stop. Now, Winstrom says they have been working on incorporating different and more efficient use of force techniques.
We want to make sure, even though the use of force is not going to look pretty, it's as effective as possible, which is why we transitioned to a grappling jiu-jitsu-based use of force, and that's a training thing.
But over the past few months, GRPD has drawn criticism after Schur's trial ended in a hung jury in May and a high-profile clash between officers and members of the Boston Square Neighborhood Association in June. Disconnect between the community and the police is something Public Safety Committee member Eric Brown brought up as a concern.
The community has been asking for things to happen as far as it relates to community police relations, and they just haven't happened. Or the things that have happened and improvements have made, maybe communication isn't the greatest. So I believe through my conversations, we're at an inflection point, or where do we go from here?
City Manager Mark Washington countered, saying sentiments like that discredit the improvements that have been made to the department.
If we continuously talk about nothing's been done, that does not give people hope, and I don't think that's accurate.
President Donald Trump signed an executive order last week encouraging cities to take a more aggressive stance on clearing unhoused encampments and, quote, urban squatting. 13 on your side's Nick Nelson has reaction from the Grand Rapids Police Chief on the president's order.
I think it's terrible, and we'll have them removed immediately. We do remove it. We've got to get the mayor to run this city properly. This city has to be run. You know, I have the right to take it over.
President Donald Trump expressed anger about homeless encampments in Washington, D.C., and signed an executive order last week to make it easier for cities to remove the unhoused from the streets. Grand Rapids Police Chief Eric Winstrom says city lawyers are already reviewing the order.
Our legal department actually just sent that executive order around just as an FYI, and they said they're going to dig into it and look into it.
Winstrom told city commissioners Tuesday the department is scaling back its involvement with the city's homeless outreach team.
We used to have 4 officers assigned full-time to the homeless outreach team. We had to remove those officers just simply to respond to 911 calls because we saw the time people were calling 911 and it was taking 15 minutes for officers to respond.
Winstrom says although the executive order is under review, he believes the city is properly handling the homelessness issue.
I think there's some grant information in there involved, like the federal government was going to look to give grants to different municipalities looking at that, but I think we're doing a pretty good job here in the city of Grand Rapids supporting our unhoused community, and I don't see it having a big impact.
Grand Rapids leaders want community feedback about the future of trash pickup in the city. That was a big topic this week at the city's Commission Night Out at the Gerald R. Ford Academic Center. Right now, the city has an open market for trash cleanup, meaning you can hire any licensed trash hauler to pick up your trash. But city leaders are thinking about switching to a single hauler system where the Public Works Department would be the only trash pickup option.
First of all, wear and tear on the streets. We'd have fewer trucks on the streets. Secondly, lower greenhouse gas emissions. Fewer trucks equals fewer greenhouse gas emissions. To us, it makes sense because we're driving down every street every day anyways. So we're driving past homes that are not necessarily our customers.
The city is surveying residents through the end of August. So far, nearly half of respondents as of earlier this week say they would not support a single hauler system. Most of those people say they prefer a choice. We have a link to the survey at 13onyourside.com. Reconstruction plans are moving forward on a section of the S-curve on US 131 in Grand Rapids. On Tuesday, the Grand Rapids City Commission approved a $7 million grant to study a Wealthy Street redesign. Right now, the plan is to move Wealthy Street so it runs below the freeway instead of how it is now, above it. This is all part of a bigger effort to eventually rebuild the freeway from Cherry Street South to 28th Street. MDOT needs to secure much more money before that can begin.
We want to rip it out and rebuild it. These interchanges are old. They were designed in the 40s and built in the 50s and 60s. So it's time to rip it out and rebuild. We just need the funding to execute.
It's estimated the entire project will cost more than $700 million. Once MDOT secures the money, John Richard says it will take a year or two before work begins. There's been a growing gap between what many federal and local officials are saying when it comes to the importance and guidance surrounding updated COVID-19 vaccines. As federal health officials have moved to change recommendations for who should get it, Michigan's top doctor is responding. What's been changed and why she says the data hasn't. Next. Federal and state health leaders seem to be sending conflicting messages about the COVID-19 vaccine booster. U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a vocal skeptic of many vaccines, announced changing recommendations back in May. But Michigan's top health doctor is urging people to stay the course and get boosted. Even with the COVID-19 pandemic years in the rearview, vaccination for the virus continues. The state of Michigan reiterating their recommendation of once a year for people 6 months and older.
The new COVID vaccine provides coverage against strains that are circulating today. And number two, we know that immunity wanes.
But with some recent guidance changes from America's top health officials, recommendations are taking a different turn. In May, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. taking to social media to announce, quote, as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule. On top of guidance to doctors, it's a move some have reportedly worried could also alter insurance coverage. But while the guidance may have changed, one of the state's top health officials now saying,
the data has not changed. The data still supports vaccine use in all of those groups.
Kennedy asserting what he called a, quote, lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children. FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty McCary also saying there was no evidence healthy kids need it today, and that most countries, he said, had stopped recommending it for children.
The American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, they are probably the most respected body that gives advice to folks who are pregnant. They still recommend the COVID vaccine. The American Academy of Pediatrics is the most trusted source of guidance to our healthcare providers who take care of kids. They still recommend the vaccine.
The Michigan Department of Health and Human Services defending their recommendations, pointing to data from the CDC that found the 2023-2024 vaccines reduced the risk of COVID-19 emergency room and urgent care visits for children in the first 2 months after vaccination by 65 to 70%.
We have reviewed the data in detail, and we believe that the COVID vaccine is not only safe, but it's really effective at preventing those serious outcomes that COVID can sometimes result in.
And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. We'll see you next week.